Hey everyone, NVIDIA is scheduled to report fiscal year 2024 fourth quarter earnings results after the markets close on Wednesday, February 21st. So in this video, I'm going to review what investors should look for when NVIDIA reports those earnings results, the key numbers to look out for, the guidance, the report, the revenue, earnings, all of that, and answer whether or not investors should buy NVIDIA stock ahead of earnings or wait until the earnings come out and then buy NVIDIA stock for those that are interested. Additionally, I will answer if NVIDIA stock price is likely to fall, increase, or stay roughly the same after the company releases its earnings results. So there's a lot to consider here going into this quarterly update from NVIDIA. So let's jump right into it.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
All right, so the call is scheduled for February 21st, 2 p.m. Pacific time, and NVIDIA will report its fourth quarter fiscal year 2024 earnings results before the conference call gets underway so that the analysts following the conference call have that information going in. So already, NVIDIA's stock price has been on a tear. The E here highlights the previous earnings reports, and you can see after this company's latest earnings results came out, the stock price came down before rising up again. So since the company last reported earnings results, the stock price has risen significantly from around $500 per share up to $726 per share as of this recording. Of course, NVIDIA stock is on my list of top stocks to buy for 2024. I placed that recommendation before the start of the year around December 30th, December 31st. It's already performed really well. So I'm going to let you know how to handle and how to trade around these earnings results that are about to come out. So regarding the numbers, management has told investors that for fiscal year 2024, revenue is expected to be 20 billion. All right, plus or minus 2%, it's going to be around 20 billion. Gross profit margins are going to be around 75%, and then GAAP operating expenses is going to be around $3.17 billion for the fourth quarter, which they will release on Wednesday. Now, analysts on Wall Street for fiscal year 2024 are expecting NVIDIA to deliver 63.4% revenue growth for fiscal year 2024. That's the quarter that's ending in the most recent update. For fiscal year 2025, investors are expecting NVIDIA to deliver revenue growth of about 20.4%. So a significant slowdown from fiscal year 2024 when revenue is expected to complete the year at 63.4% and another slowdown from the 120% in fiscal year 2023. So you're seeing this significant slowdown from NVIDIA in terms of their revenue growth expectations and their revenue growth. So analysts don't expect NVIDIA to continue growing at the phenomenal rates that it has been growing at. They expect a slowdown here. They expect the company to slow down, and that's understandable because a company the size of NVIDIA is not going to grow at 100% every year indefinitely, right? So that's understandable. Now, in the quarter that just ended, in the third quarter, NVIDIA delivered 18.1 billion in revenue, which was up 206% year over year. Gross margin jumped to 74%, up from 70%, and operating expenses came in at 2.98 billion, which was up barely by 16% year over year. That's what's been most impressive for NVIDIA, is that this revenue growth has exploded, but their expenses have not gone up all that much, right? 200% revenue growth and only 16% operating expense growth. That's impressive with gross profit margin of 74%. For a company that's mostly hardware, they do have software, but it's mostly hardware. So that's impressive, and that's what had a lot of investors excited about NVIDIA stock. Now, what's also going to be important when the company reports its earnings is not just the revenue, right? I already mentioned they're expecting 20 billion in revenue reported for the fourth quarter when they release the results on Wednesday, but they're also going to give investors guidance. They're also likely to give investors guidance for the first quarter of fiscal 2025. And what investors are going to look for in terms of guidance there. So when NVIDIA offers guidance for the first quarter of their fiscal year 2025, Wall Street analysts are going to hope for revenue forecast of above 20 billion, right? Because if the company does deliver 20 billion in revenue in the fourth quarter, analysts are going to want to see an incremental continued growth in quarter-over-quarter revenue. Now, in their most recently completed quarter, you saw 34% quarter-over-quarter revenue growth. I don't think that level of revenue growth will continue, 34% quarter-over-quarter revenue growth. I don't think that level of quarter-over-quarter revenue growth will continue. In fact, if you look at the 18.1 billion of Q3, and if they deliver 20 billion in Q4, that's roughly 10% Q over Q growth, and something a little bit less than that is likely for the next quarter. So a slowdown in quarter-over-quarter growth, but year-over-year growth will still be solid. And investors are also going to look for guidance for continued discipline in operating expense. So you saw 2.98 billion in Q3 operating expenses, and then the guidance is for 3.17 billion for Q4. So the guidance for the quarter after that, it should come in at less than 3.5 billion in operating expense, and that would make investors happy if that is the forecast expected. If all those come through, I think investors will be pleased, and the talk of continued enthusiasm for AI will continue, and NVIDIA's outlook will remain strong. Additionally, in the conference call, when the CEO and CFO discuss the prospects for the next year or two, investors will want to hear continued enthusiasm. It doesn't have to be as strong as it has been because, as I already mentioned, the revenue growth is decelerating, but still, momentum, optimism. They don't want to hear talk of competition coming in and hurting NVIDIA already, or cautious headwinds and things like that. Investors don't want to hear too much talk about that. They want to hear more enthusiasm and more optimism from NVIDIA. Now, the stock is trading at a forward price to earnings of 27.39, which is on the more expensive end of where it's been in the last year. But given its robust prospects, I don't think the stock is expensive. That being said, to answer the question, should investors buy NVIDIA stock going into earnings? In general, my recommendation to trade around earnings is to wait until after earnings come out. To wait until after earnings come out, when you're this close to earnings, when you're a couple of days away, even a week or two away from earnings, because so much information has come out between the last earnings report and this earnings report that is related to NVIDIA, but is not directly from NVIDIA, that the market is pricing in to some degree, but not completely, because they're all pricing in probabilities of it happening and not happening. And so the pricing around earnings are, as you probably observed, more volatile. So I encourage investors not to take that extra risk in trading before earnings. Just wait for the day or two after earnings come out. Let the stock price adjust to the new information that's been released, and then you can buy the stock. I generally feel that in the few days following an earnings release is one of the best times to buy a stock after you incorporate and digest all that new information, because then you're coming in fresh with all that information coming out just recently, and so there hasn't been a lot of data been released since the previous report. So even though I rate NVIDIA stock as one of my top stocks to buy, and I still rate it as one of my top stocks to buy, if you're interested in buying, I would say to wait until after earnings come out. If you liked the video you just saw and you want to see more just like it, please subscribe to the channel. I can't keep this channel free without the support of viewers like you. And if you're already subscribed, Thank you, and I appreciate your support.